Hi everyone, welcome back to So What's Next. I'm Heidi. Today I am bringing you quite a long video. It is on the Vogue pattern, Ralph Rucci. It's supposed to be a shirt. It's pattern number 1347. I have turned it into a jacket. Just suits my purposes better. It's a very oversized shirt if you wear it that way. I thought I would just bring you through a sort of fast forward of the whole process. The planning, the cutting, the laying out of the fabric. And the reason why you're getting the full view is because this is an upcycle of a tablecloth. It's a tablecloth that my mother gave me. I've had it for ages and it's totally darling. It's got this beautiful embroidery on it. Now, it's not hand embroidered, it's machine embroidered, but it's vintage. So, you know, the pattern has that vintage vibe. The pattern of the embroidery has that vintage vibe. And it was screaming like jacket or dress or something to me. So I finally got into it. I thought you might like to see the creative process behind figuring out how to place all those motifs on the tablecloth into, you know, the proper places on the garment and how that works. Again, it's sort of like a lot of it's a fast forwarded version, and I will do a voiceover so you know what's happening in the process. But I go from journaling and note-taking to the full construction of the garment and talk a little bit about the binding. I will do a separate video on binding and, you know, hems and seams of garments, especially because Ralph Rucci does some interesting things with his seams in both of the patterns I've done so far. So this is Vogue pattern 1347, and I have also done a jacket, a coat, an overcoat that's just beautiful in Italian wool from B. Black & Sons, another awesome fabric source if you don't know them. It's a beautiful Italian wool suiting and really nice to work with. The coat took me months to do. I spent a lot of time with hand embroidering the buttons and things like that. I don't have a process because that was before I was YouTubing, but I did pop a photo up towards the end of the video so you could see it. And I might do a review at some point just to show you the insides and outsides. It's got little pockets and things like that. But anyway, I'm getting off track. I totally ramble, obviously. So I'm going to stop that. Please, if you like the creative making process, you're a maker and you just kind of get inspired looking at other people's YouTubes of making stuff, this is a good site for you. I'm an artist. I'm a fine artist. I do gallery work, but I also sew and just make all kinds of stuff. So if that is your gig, you know, hit the button down below and subscribe so you can see what I'm doing. And eventually I'm going to be doing some free giveaways, including fabric from my fabric stash, and maybe possibly even some small artworks, things like that. So there'll be a benefit to you. And most of all, I just want to hear about what you're making and, you know, if you have suggestions about what I'm making, because I am not perfect by any means, but I just love the process. So let's get going. Vogue 1347 Ralph Rucci shirt. Jacket, aka jacket. Okay everyone, so I hope you can hear this all right. This is me planning out. I keep a journal where I take notes for all the projects that I'm working on, and this is a complicated one. So I am noting all the different parts using the pattern. I love the pattern list, and I go through piece by piece, especially on a complicated pattern, and I write down which pieces I'm going to be using.
noting seam allowances. I want to know everything up front. So here's a layout pattern, which isn't going to apply to me. Here's that tablecloth I was telling you about, the embroidery. And now I've got to figure out the layout for cutting. So that's complicated in this one. Now I'm going to take a look at the pattern pieces, get a sense for size, and paper scissors. People, paper scissors. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, this is sort of my habit, is cutting all the pieces out that I need. I get those sorted into a pile, and then I kind of clean up my workspace again. And you'll see here in a minute, I'll begin ironing the pieces. You don't want those wrinkles in the pieces because they can affect your pattern up to like an eighth, sometimes even a quarter of an inch. So you should really iron your patterns out with a dry iron. Okay, so we're back. I'm on the ironing board. Just giving you a shot of ironing the pattern up close. And then, of course, I hope that you have washed your fabric. Always wash your fabric. This has been washed many, many times, but needs an ironing. I'm hitting it with a real hot, steamy iron. Your fabric really and your patterns should be as flat and smooth as possible. Okay, starting from a clear workspace and back to my journal. Now I have to figure out placement, so I decided to begin doing that by doing a sketch. I really have to visualize things. It takes me a while. This video might be long, but let me tell you, this process took days. So I'm sorting out whether I want to use that trim that's hanging. And I'm sorting out which pieces go where on the body, and then which embroidery motifs I want on those pieces. So I've sketched them all out, and then I get out the pattern pieces, and luckily, you know, you can see through them. So I place them over the motifs and try and decide which motifs would be best on which pattern piece. So after looking at the pieces, what I decided was, I thought the central motif, the biggest motif, would go in the center back because that piece was one solid piece. The complicated piece was going to be this piece, number 5. This is a shoulder piece. So Ralph Rucci does these really cool arms on things where he uses a gusset under the arm, and then the shoulder and sleeve are all one. So there's this big dart over the shoulder, and it kind of acts almost like a little cape, you could see here. And I've circled a little motif drawing that I want on the front of the shoulder, right there. And I've also made notes on the muslin, you know, which side's front, which side's back, because his patterns get complicated. You're going from front to back, inside, outside of fabric. He has these really cool darts. So I decided better safe than sorry and make a muslin. If you've never made one of his patterns before at all, make a muslin. The coat that I did took forever because I made, I think, 2 muslins. Okay, so what I'm showing you here is an artist pencil. I started trying to do a rubbing with an artist pencil. A rubbing is when you place something on top of a textured surface and you rub. The pencil didn't work, so I moved to a tailor's chalk, which was softer and did a better job. You have to hold both fabric pieces firmly in place, and then you rub over top of the design. This worked with this because the embroidery is raised and quite firm, so I got a decent enough rubbing on this so that I could then go back, draw it out with my artist pencil. I think it's like a 6B, a soft pencil, and then I could see where my motif was gonna, you know, hang out on the shoulder. This is me just sketching it out a little bit so I become a little more clear about which part is where. Okay, so there's the design. Sorry about the shaky camera. There's the pattern piece, the shoulder piece. We'll trip around my studio here for a minute. Sorry about that. And then I just wanted you to see what this is an approximation of how it's going to look on the sleeve. Okay, so here I've decided where the shoulder piece is going to be cut out from the tablecloth. This is the back motif, so that's the biggest motif, and it's the most solid piece of fabric. This is a cut on the fold, so I have to place the fold along the center of the embroidery motif that I want to use. You're going to notice I did not use the grain lines on this because I had to utilize you know, this large tablecloth and figure out where all the pieces were going to go on it. So I couldn't really use the suggestions for the grain lines. This fabric is old and it's soft, so it really was okay. It drapes, in the end, you'll see it drapes beautifully, so I wasn't too worried about that. Just figuring out the specifics of how everything was going to fit, and to balance the design on the jacket, which is what you see me doing, referring to my journal, was very tricky and time consuming. I kind of moved these pattern pieces around quite a bit, and you'll see in the end I ended up making some patches to cover spots that were on the tablecloth, but also to balance out the design in a way that was pleasing to me. Okay, so here you're seeing me start to lay and pin pattern pieces. I've decided on the major, you know, the larger pieces and the major pieces. Just trying to think it through a little more, lay things out, and then I begin cutting. Something you want to be really careful with if you're doing this kind of project is making sure you're on the right side of the fabric and making sure you are on the right side of the pattern. Like, is the pattern supposed to be laid down on the wrong side, or is the pattern supposed to be laid down on the right side? And that's what you just saw me doing. I can't remember what this piece was calling for. I think it's you know, supposed to be laid out everything on the right side. It's possible that the fabric was supposed to be done from the wrong side, but I could not do that because I really needed to visualize how the motif was going to look like on this piece. Okay, so here you see me taking the center motif, and I'm going to put it on my trusty model Joanne and check the draping. I am draping sleeves, I'm draping the back motif, I'm kind of pinning things together and checking to see if I want to keep the seam allowances at 5/8 inch. Sometimes I move them up to 1 inch because I don't like the extra, I just don't like the extra fabric, and that's what I'm trying to figure out here. Okay, so I finished cutting all the pieces and pinning them together. I basted everything together, and then I have sort of a mock-up of what the coat's going to be. At that point, I will start to figure out what I'm going to do with the collar and all the other extra little details. So you'll see that in the next clip, how I start putting the details together. Okay guys, so sorry about jumping in here. You're going to get some different sound bites on this video, but I wanted you to see this. I have jumped around a bit and skipped a bit on you. I'll try and fill you in just with a voice dub over. But here is the coat so far, and what I'm about to do is I cut out some fabric from what was left of the tablecloth and am making this patch that I'm going to sew down. The patches are functional in that they're covering some of the spots that were on the tablecloth, and they're also just aesthetic to balance out what I couldn't do just from like the pieces, like balancing the flowers on the pieces. So this, I was showing you, I've gathered it. I should have showed you that process, but I'll do a real quick tutorial on this. You gather it with a running stitch. I just did that by hand, and then when you pull it, it kind of flips the edge under, and then I hot steamed it, and it makes a really nice edge for the patch. So that's that part. Hi guys! Okay, so this is the stage we're at. I have applied these patches, hand sewed them on. Sorry I didn't show you that detail, but you know, that takes a while, it's kind of boring. So I will do a tutorial on how to make a patch pretty easily. Very kind of cool thing to be able to do. And this is covering up some spots in the tablecloth that were, let me lift that up. This is covering up some spots that were on the tablecloth that I didn't want to be seen, and I made it into a cool pocket. So it's actually for a cell phone. This is my little camera holder, but you can see, awesome. Pockets should be in everything, right? This is the front. I'm going to sew this on now, and I'll show you that. That's simple. It's a 5/8 seam. And then in the back, it's got this beautiful little kimono shape. So let me dance with Joanne. See? Woo! Really fluttery and light and cool. Like I said, we're moving into fall, so it's not the right season, but you know, that's how I am. A little bit behind the times. So what's the other thing I want to say? Oh,
collar. The pattern Vogue 1347 calls for a collar, and I do love collars. They keep your neck warm in the fall and stuff. But since this is so lightweight, I'm sort of attracted to this, or maybe even just putting a mandarin collar on it. So I haven't decided. Anyway, that hasn't changed. I'll figure that out later. On to the sewing part. Okay people, so I'm going to show you a little something. Sorry for the close-up, I'm using different cameras, hope you can deal with it. I want to show you a little something. I'm doing this Vogue 1347 pattern. It's Ralph Rucci, and he uses a lot of curves, and I'm familiar with curves from sewing wedding ring quilts, but curves can be difficult. You have to use a lot of ease, and even though this one is quite simple, I'm just basting everything together basically to see if I like the form of the jacket, since I did it in a larger size. It's supposed to be a shirt, I'm making it a jacket. So he also uses a lot of kind of couture techniques where he uses French hems, or he binds his hems to keep everything nice and neat and beautiful on the inside, which is awesome. I love it. It takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of time, and I don't want to do that when I'm just, sorry, it is so close, jeez. I don't want to do that when I'm just basting it together. So let me show you what I'm going to do, and I'll show you the ample seams so that you can see what you will end up having to do with the final thing. And if you're not doing sort of like a mock-up or just basting it together first, you can just go ahead, do the seams, then sew the pieces together. But my suggestion is, after each segment that you put together, do the seams like he's asking you to, because they're going to need to be bound when you put the top pieces to the bottom, when you attach the top pieces to the bottom pieces. Okay, here's a shot of it so you can see. Let me put it on the gray so you can see it better. Okay, this is the untrimmed seam allowance from the other pieces. You can see I have this overhanging piece. They're not matching up perfectly, and you know, ordinarily I would just trim that off, but I want to, what I'm gonna do is just sew right over it. Bam, like that. But it's unbound, it's not done as a French seam, which I believe is what he's suggesting. So he's suggesting you cut this side shorter, and then you fold the longer side over top, and then fold it under, like that. And then you sew it down, and you get a really clean seam with the raw edges on the inside. And I will do that with the final version, or like when I decide this is the final version. This is the part that's kind of a pain in the butt, but I just wanted to see what it's going to look like. Alright, measuring 5/8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm eyeballing this because, like I said, I'm just basting. Alright. I could put a piece of tape here, but I kind of know what line to run it down. If you're unsure, put a piece of that painter's tape, a blue painter's tape, right along your 5/8 mark, and that will be your guide point. I'm putting a really, the 5mm stitch, because again, this is a basting stitch. Normally I'd do this by hand, but I kind of want to get it done quicker. So
Okay, so we are doing a wrap up, and I'm sorry I eliminated some of the details here and there of this Vogue 1347 Ralph Rucci pattern. The binding of the seams just takes a very long time, and I don't have a really good setup for my camera on the sewing machine. I'm going to work on that and bring you more details in future videos. But we have what we have, and I'm going to turn this camera around and show you the final version, try it on for you, and show you the seaming on the inside. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you thought, if you could critique it, put it in the comments below. I'd love to hear it. I'm new to this. It's fun for me. Hopefully it was informative for you. I just adore the Ralph Rucci patterns. He's so clever with his pattern making, so it's been fun doing them. I did another coat, and I'll pop a picture up of that so you can see that. I did that last year. It was a beautiful pink Italian wool suiting coat. So anyway, yeah, I love his patterns. Vogue never lets me down. That said, I will be moving on from Ralph Rucci. Probably going to do some draping, and I just have a stockpile of patterns that I haven't done yet. I want to do a bomber, but I'm probably going to upcycle a bomber first. Anyway, I'm rambling. Here is the beautiful look at those sleeves. Isn't that gorgeous? Okay, so there's the beautiful coat. This was a tablecloth, as I think I explained earlier. Patches over some of the areas that were kind of spotted. This is a funky pocket. Hopefully you can see that. I did a bit of hand stitching on this and a bit of different binding techniques. This is his Ralph Rucci's self-binding, like French seam. Some of them are a bit sloppy. I got a bit lazy. I put some interfacing in this one to just give it a nice, so it would hang. It looks a little wrinkly in here. I think that's the lighting. It actually doesn't look quite as puckered. But it gives it a little stiffness in around the neck, and it sits really beautifully. And I did this with a blind stitch, kind of large blind stitch, but it gives a different texture to it. And then let's show you this sleeve. Look at how these sleeves wing out. It's just a beautiful kimono sleeve, and this was an additional piece that flared out at the bottom. The beautiful thing is he uses these gussets under the arms, so this piece is all one piece until you reach the flounce. And then if I turn my lovely assistant Joanne around, you get the back view. That's looking a bit lopsided. Let's see here. Okay, so here you can see this bound seam here is all, that wraps around to the front like a cape. And then it is bound here, but then this allows you a really nice spot for that feature image or embroidered image. So, really sweet. This can be layered, it can be closed. I'm going to pop a few pictures up on the screen so you can see it in a few different clothing options.